friends, I am recording this to share my testimony with you, and hopefully it will bring you some hope and encouragement, specifically in the area of hearing from God. He definitely wants us all to hear from Him. He is speaking to all of us, and He wants us to hear from Him. There will be another video at a later date with more specifics on how to hear from Him, but for right now, I just wanted to share my testimony and hopefully give you some encouragement with that. So I believe my first memory hearing from Him was I was around 4 or 5 years old, and He just kind of would help guide me like a parent, just tell me some helpful things and things like that. And I remember when I was 7 years old, I told my mom that I hear God's voice, and she's like, "No, sweetie, that's just your inner thoughts, or your inner voice, you thinking about things, you talking to yourself or whatever." And I said, "Mom, my inner thoughts are telling me to get candy, find sugar, eat sugar." Like that was my inner thoughts. I said, "This voice is telling me to obey my parents and to listen to what you guys say." And she just kind of stared at me for a while and was like, "Okay, well, good night," because she had been putting me to bed at that time. But anyway, but then she started to learn, and other people saw that I could know things that were about to happen, and I could know things that there's no way I would know. One example is I just randomly started helping my mom I just walked downstairs and was randomly starting to help her, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm helping you look for paper clips." And she's like, "How did you know I was looking for paper clips?" I'm like, "I don't know." But things like that, just random things like that, I would just know things that there's just no way I could know. And then again, seeing the future. So everybody's telling me, "You're psychic," all my friends and some adults, "You're psychic." And so I was still, I knew that God was real. I had no doubt about that. He spoke to me in dreams. He spoke to me, showed me things, explained things to me. And I just knew He was real. And I had some of the coolest dreams back then that I'm starting to get again by His grace, which are really cool. But there's so many ways He wants to bless us. There's so many ways. And we can receive all that He has for us. And that's one thing I say daily is, "Lord, I receive all that you have for me in Jesus' name." But in any case, some not great things started to happen. There is an enemy who doesn't like us. And so I did end up going through my childhood and adolescence and experienced every form of abuse possible. And I had, of course, like most of us go through, unfortunately, I had some very terrible times with friends. And in middle school, I did become suicidal. I attempted to cut my wrist. And so I went through a lot of really terrible things. And of course, God helped me through them. And I had that hope. But it did lead me to some rebelliousness because I didn't understand. And the people who called themselves Christians in my life were not always amazing. I did have, relatives that were Christians I didn't see all the time, that were super loving, amazing people, still are. But most of the people around me that called themselves Christians were not great people to me. So I started searching for truth because I didn't believe that was truth. And so I started looking in all the different religions, learning about Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam. I read, different things, learned different things, walked in different ways throughout teen years and my 20s. Also searched through drugs, alcohol, many other ways to try to find some kind of happiness in life. When I've been a counselor for, since way back then. So I counseled other people. I was doing different types of learning about people in different ways then too. And then I fell into New Age, and that seemed to fit me the most because, I knew I was psychic, and so that made most sense than anything I had come across. And of course I didn't have the Bible or anything, and whenever I tried to read it was always like the King James version, didn't understand it at all. So anyway, even though I could hear God's voice, I was not able to discern truth and which one was God and which one was the enemy some of the time. So I believed that doing astrological psychic readings for people was God's will for my life. So that's what I did. I also consulted, supposedly, people who had passed for people, and again, knew things that way too, knew crazy things about people that supposedly someone that had passed on had told me. And so I was doing all kinds of stuff like that. But I still had this feeling, I did not have peace, still had a negative feeling inside that something wasn't right. Of all the different people that believed it, and things they were doing weren't right, things they were saying weren't right. I've always had this strong sense of wrong and right, which I now know is a prophetic personality that people can be born with, but I knew nothing about the prophetic or anything like that. And every church I tried to go to, nobody was talking about God speaking to you. So that's, again, furthered my belief that New Age was the way. That's what I thought at the time, the truth, I mean. So I kept doing that, and psychic readings for people were, crying of joy, had peace and everything. But what I realized later looking back is that sure, good things were happening, but they weren't getting any closer to Jesus or having a relationship with God themselves and through Jesus. And they weren't getting any closer to the truth. They were getting it was like a quick fix, quick happiness at that moment. And some were being healed, and because God is always good and God will always use everything for the good of those who love him, and just he's very gracious and amazing. But I still had this bad feeling that it just wasn't right. Something wasn't right. And I learned everything about all the different signs, and there was just so many negative things. And I just know that's not God. And I just want to take this time to encourage you that God does not stop with negative. He always has a way to make something better. So whether it's sickness or wrong beliefs or something in your astrological sign, it just does not ever end with negativity. He always has a positive, a solution, always. And he's so gracious and loving. So just wanted to say that then. But so I kept doing my little New Age things to communicate with God. And I was also, doing other things, drugs, whatever. Not all the time, but, occasionally, whatever. I went to, raves a few times, did some drugs I shouldn't then. And I did hear God's voice very clearly one time when I was at a rave, and I was feeling very euphoric, drug-induced euphoria. And God, Yahweh, very clearly said to me, I can make you feel this way without drugs. And that just brought me so much hope, and I have leaned on that. And that's eventually the statement, I believe, that brought me out of all of that. But of course, through Jesus. So I was doing a lot of different things to find happiness. I just did not have a peace, and doing all of the things to heal from childhood and things I had been through, and different abuses, and more abuses happened and in that time. Then at one point, someone bought me a Bible. So I was like, okay, whatever. Had a bad attitude about the Bible and put it aside. I was like, what can this 2,000-year-old book do for me? And put it aside, whatever. And then one time I was doing one of my little New Age things, and the Lord said, okay, I want you to go get the Bible, and I'm going to use that to speak to you. I was like, okay, whatever. So I got the Bible, opened it up, and it said, the scripture jumped off the page at me, came out at me. And it said, astrology is an abomination to the Lord. And I was like, okay, well, that's clearly not right. Because I truly believe that I was doing God's will with doing astrology and psychic readings and astrological charts and all that. So I closed it up. Then I opened it again, and it said something about you shall not consult a medium. I believe that it was somewhere having to do with Saul and when he was consulting a medium or whatever, but I don't remember exactly, and it was many years ago. So something about don't consult mediums, and I was doing that too. I was being a medium also, so I was like, okay, now I was kind of getting concerned. And then I was like, okay, God, whatever else you want to show me, I'm listening. I believe this is you now. So closed the Bible again. I was like, okay, prayed, show me something, whatever you want me to see. Opened it up, and it was phrased differently, but it basically said the same thing. It said astrology is an abomination, and that one was lit up. It was really lit, like on fire or something. So then I said, okay, God, what do you want me to do? And I said, I'm listening. What do you want me to do? He said, I want you to throw away everything that has anything to do with New Age, everything. And I said, well, can I sell it? And very firmly and sternly, he said, no. And I knew in that moment, without a doubt, how he felt about New Age. He didn't want other people to have anything to do with it either. And in my mind, that's how He wanted me to just throw it away. So I went and got a garbage bag and threw everything away that had anything to do with New Age. All the books I read, all the writings I did, all the tools I had to talk to him, just little ornaments, trinkets, anything that had anything to do with New Age, I threw it all away, took it out to the garbage. That was it. That started my process of God removing some of the veils that were over my eyes and blinding me from seeing his truth. And shortly after that, I went through something called Cleansing Stream, where I got delivered from a whole lot of demonic influences in my life and wrong thinking and lies. I read the Bible, finally. I read it in 3 months, started memorizing scriptures, and then eventually we had a retreat where you go through demonic deliverance. So I was delivered from all kinds of things. That was the first time that in that deliverance, that was the first time I felt that euphoria that I had felt when I was previously taking drugs or using recreational drugs. I had felt euphoric, and I literally felt like I was floating because there had been so much lifted off of me, that just so many lies I allowed in my life. So that's when I gave my life to the Lord. I said, take my life, do whatever you want with it. I want to serve you. I know that you're the way, the truth, and the life. And then I got reading the Bible, learning more, hearing more clearly. Like everything was just so clear. And I finally had that peace that I'd always been searching for, the peace of God that surpasses all human understanding. I finally had that peace knowing that is the way. And I want to backtrack a little bit, because before I gave my life to Jesus, I did feel like Yahweh, God, was telling me Jesus is the way. Like he was showing me that this is the way, that following Christ is the way. And I was like, okay, I see what you're doing. And I was like, I also want to backtrack to the Bible too. I was like, okay, I see what you're doing, and that's fine. I'll be a Christian, but this is what I said to him. I said, fine, I'll be a Christian, but I'm not going to be judgmental, because that was my view. That's what I thought of Christians. And I know, unfortunately, I'm not alone. And then he very clearly said, good, that's how I want it. That's how I like it. That's how I like it. So, and backtrack to the Bible, when I was going through this cleansing stream before I officially gave my life to Jesus, I also was struggling with the Bible. Again, 2,000 years ago, what good is it going to do? And I went on a run, and that was my prayer for the run, is, okay, can you just show me about this Bible? Like, how can I believe that this is you? And so by the end of the run, that was a pretty short run, he switched my thinking completely, as only he can. I got a completely new revelation that this book that had been written 2,000 years ago is still amazingly and miraculously helping people today. That was written thousands of years ago, still helping people today, still the #1 bestseller every year. Who can write a book like that but God? And now